Australia's economy is growing only because its population is growing, mainly due to immigration, migration. And if you look at, there you go, on the chart, it shows you per capita growth during the Fraser years, on the left of your screen there. Then it shoots up during the Hawke and Keating years and the Howard years. Those two strong blue graphs, that was per capita growth. That's when all of us got wealthier, richer, our kids did better. That was all during the 70s and 80s. That's when it was all happening for Australia. Then you get a kind of less per capita growth during the Abbott, virtually none during the Rudd-Gillard years. No surprise there, a couple of clowns they were. But then it picks up again during the Abbott, Turnbull, Morrison, with the dip during COVID. And then look at the little miserable red worm at the very end of your graph there. Absolutely pathetic. The destruction of Australia's per capita growth by Labor. They've destroyed the economy.
That's a per capita recession.
Yes, yes. Yeah, they've destroyed your kids' opportunities and futures. They've destroyed our prosperity. They're destroying the very things that made Australia great. Shame on them. But sorry, James.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, you know, like there was an article, and it was so cynical that they pushed out through the Nine media this week that said, again, this, you know, how much smaller our economy would be without this. They are literally saying that the only thing that's keeping us going is people from overseas, because we can't train our own people, we can't have our own babies. All of these things are so defeatist. It's such a negative attitude. And I really think the junkie or the alcoholic metaphor is really, really apt here. This is like saying, what Labor is saying is like somebody who is a complete 2 bottles of bourbon a day drunk saying, hey, I can't get off the booze because if I get off the booze, I might start seeing bats and I won't be able to stop shaking. You know, this is not a healthy situation that we're in. We have a problem. We need to do something about it.
They're saying the quiet bit out loud. They're unashamed about it now, saying that without this influx, economically we're going to struggle. But if that influx came with increased living standards, I'd say, OK, perhaps worth it. But we are seeing our living standards drop. And that is something that's being felt across the board, whether you're in a socioeconomic group that's struggling or whether even you're in the sort of upper income bands, you are feeling this hit. People are hurting, and you can see that with, it's going to get worse with the housing crisis that they've induced with their stupid tax hikes, because you've got people now who are in negative equity, people who are encouraged to go out and buy a property with this 5% deposit scheme they've been pushing, and now their properties in some instances are worth less than the loan they have.
Yes,
I mean, that is economically catastrophic for those households.
It is vandalism.
Imagine this, a graph, a line. That line's supposed to show you're getting richer every year. Instead, it looks like a worm that gave up on life. That, mates, is Australia's per capita GDP growth under the current government. And today, we're pulling back the curtain on what's really going on. Quick favour, if you're loving this breakdown, let me see you hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications bell to stay informed. Thanks if you did. Now let's get back to it.
Now, we're going to run you an ad that they're running overseas for that 5% Aussie home loan. So the Albanese, like your metaphor of the drug addict, the junkie, whatever, absolutely. They're touting overseas 5% Aussie home buyers loans. Have a look at this ad.
對好多澳洲人而言，置業似乎遙不可及。但而家澳洲政府5% deposit scheme 已經推出新安排，所有首次置業人士都可以受惠，收入上限已被取消，而合資格住宅範圍亦進一步擴大。
This is the sort of thing that gives me, and I think an awful lot of people, an absolute aneurysm. I could feel my blood pressure absolutely spiking during that. This is the thing. We are actually now at this point now where we've just, it is now literally, they are playing into every single criticism that people on this show, a lot of people in One Nation, some people in the Liberals have had about the migration policy. Tony Abbott has been exceedingly articulate on this, that we are now nothing more than an economy. We are nothing more than a GDP. The only loyalty You know, you see Anthony Albanese talk about Australian values, and then the best thing that he can do is whip out his Medicare card. So all he's done is created this sort of cult of government to be the replacement identity for being, you know, an Australian. And now it's simply just about getting bodies in, keeping the Ponzi scheme working. Exactly. This is all this is. It's a Ponzi scheme. And there's a second element to this, of course. There's the second bit. You know, we remember when Jacinta Price got into trouble, mostly from the centre-left of her own party, over her own...
The bedwetters, to give it their technical name.
Yes, Alex Hawke and that whole crew. And, you know, for what she said about the government bringing in migrants because they're going to vote Labour. Well, you know, last week when you were away on Insiders,
we saw that.
They talked about, oh, well, isn't it, you know, fantastic, all these, you know, new Indian migrants who came to the Modi rally, Labour wants them. And now the Daily Telegraph, my friend Matthew Benz has reported a great story that local councils in Western Sydney are being pushed to increase the number of citizenship ceremonies amid accusations the federal government is trying to mint new Labour voters before the next election. The idea now is so cynical. It is to use migration to lock in a permanent Labour advantage. This is what we're up against.
Well, they've brought in so many people that they're now big waiting lists for citizenship ceremonies. So they can turn elections. When you've got marginal electorates, that could turn an election if you go and naturalise a few thousand people who predominantly vote a certain way. And let's not forget, what Jacinta Price said was based on what a Labor pollster had stated. He can say it without any issue. Yep. And he was saying he was talking specifically about Indian migration, which is the biggest growing sector, will overtake, it'll be number one shortly. And according to him, something like around 80% are voting for Labor. That could turn elections. We're talking about significant numbers.
Absolutely. Keep us another 3 years of Labor will destroy this country. I want to pick up on two things that Rita said about One Nation having the strength. One Nation's greatest strength is the ability to say what people are thinking, that the political class, the elitists in Canberra, refuse to talk about, particularly the coalition. One such thing being, of course, immigration, as we were discussing, but also just, James, to your point, and we'll play a clip of Pauline Hanson at CPAC in just a second. But to your point about One Nation's economic agenda, the key thing which ties these two things together is that One Nation has said they will abolish all these kind of climate change institutions, AEMOs, climate authorities, all this garbage, which automatically will free up billions of dollars of taxpayers' money, which currently is going into all these boondoggles, and we'll start reducing our debt, which is what we need to do. But the big thing that... So, you know, climate change is the great untouchable. The coalition still refused to pull out of Paris. New Zealand has pulled out of the Paris Accord, for crying out loud. New Zealand. Come on,
that's just embarrassing now.
Come on, Matt Canavan. Come on, get out there and say we're pulling out of the Paris Agreement. Because all these things are tied back into that commitment. But that's another story. But let's have a listen to Pauline Hanson speaking at CPAC only a day or so ago.
So here's the trick question nobody's asking. Is the economy actually growing, or are we just adding more people to a shrinking pie? Because on paper, GDP is up. Feels good, right? Except per capita, meaning what you actually get, has barely moved since the Howard years put runs on the board. The engine room isn't productivity, it's population. Immigration is doing the heavy lifting while everyday households quietly go backwards. It's less economic miracle and more credit card with a rising limit. Looks fine until the bill arrives. And speaking of bills, let's talk housing. Schemes designed to help first home buyers with tiny deposits sound generous until you realise a smaller deposit means a bigger loan, which means more exposure the moment prices wobble. Critics argue it's less a leg up and more a setup for negative equity down the track. Not villains necessarily, just policy that might be solving today's headline at tomorrow's expense. Now, here's where it gets spicy. Some commentators go further, suggesting migration settings and citizenship timelines aren't just about population policy, they're about political advantage, reshaping the electorate over time. That's a serious claim, and it deserves scrutiny rather than a shrug either way. Because if true, it's a democracy problem. And if false, it's a trust problem. Either way, transparency should win.
Like England, no. And until we stand up and speak against it and create debate, nothing will change. And our children and grandchildren will never understand, what our history is about, where we've come. And do not apologise for being white.
So Pauline's been talking about things like banning the burqa, which many countries do ban the burqa for the obvious reason that the burqa, particularly with women under 18, for young girls, it's a form of segregation, it's a form of reverse integration, reverse assimilation. It's taking a group of the community, a vulnerable group in the community, and saying, you're not going to look like the rest of the mainstream, mono, or whatever culture you want to call it, but the mainstream, we're segregating you. The burqa, to my view, is every bit as segregationist as putting Rosa Parks at the back of the bus. That's what it is. And to say, let's ban the burqa is not controversial. There are many countries around the world who do it for that very reason. We need assimilation. We need integration. We need our cultures brought together under the Australian culture. That's not hard. Then you get on... sorry, James.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No.
Well, I was going to say, it's interesting because this is the one area where I think, and we talk about Pauline Hanson speaking in a sort of a demotic fashion that, doesn't necessarily meet with sort of, the elite way of speaking. Trump does the exact same thing. The one concern I had about the bringing up the burqa thing is it feels like a bit like they're trying to graft the British and French and European problems that they have with migration, which were much more illegal-based and refugee-based and Islam-based, with, our problem in Australia. Our problem in Australia is actually the legal immigration system and the size of that. And I just think that the key is to be very targeted about...
Well, let's ask someone who wore a burqa as a 3-year-old.
No, I never wore a bloody burqa. What do you mean? A hijab.
Hijab, okay.
No, Iranians don't wear burqas. Even the Islamists don't go that far. So that's how radical it is. I mean, even some...
I rest my case.
Yes. The burqa is frowned upon in many Muslim countries. Yeah. So there's a profound misunderstanding, I think, amongst the Australian media class, the political class, all the leftists about this burqa debate. It's twofold. It's one, a symbol of Islamism, but it is also, as you said, a tool of oppression. It is a tool of gender apartheid where you're completely dehumanising someone who is... And they would say, oh, no, it's a choice in the West. I would argue it's never a choice unless you want to be ostracised by your family and your community and perhaps even be subjected to violence in some cases. So I think it's a simple thing. You're right, James. We don't have the issues that, say, France has with Islamism and having a significant problem with the intake they've had. Yeah. But it's a symbolism. So if you can't even tackle it in a country like Australia, where the number of people wearing a burqa is so minimal, then it shows you don't really have control of your country. You don't have control of the debate. If you can't eliminate something that is a very minor problem with ease, and it becomes a huge issue, then really, how are you going to tackle the bigger issues where it is consequential?
Yeah. Then there's the culture debate, things like assimilation, national identity, and where lines get drawn around religious or cultural dress, such as proposed burqa bans. Supporters frame it as social cohesion. Opponents call it government overreach into personal choice and religious freedom. Both sides genuinely believe they're protecting something. Unity on one side, levity on the other. That tension isn't going away soon. Underneath all of it is the bigger question everyone in this debate agrees on, weirdly enough. Do the people actually calling the shots still reflect the people living with the consequences? Whether you blame bureaucrats, lobbyists, or bad incentives, the feeling of being governed at, rather than with, is a bipartisan fuel right now. So, Ponzi scheme or growing pains? Electoral engineering or coincidence? Cultural stand or government overreach? That's the debate. Thanks so much for watching Australia Signal. Don't forget to let us know your thoughts in the comments below.